Before we get started, if you enjoy the show and would like to support us, we have just two things we would like you to check out. Please head to our YouTube channel and subscribe to the show. Our goal is to hit 1,000 subscribers, so we need all the help we can get.
And if you would like to take your support to the next level and get early access to the show, you can come and join us on Patreon. You'll even get a shout out at the end of the episodes. Links to both will be in the show notes.
Right then, Cam, let's get on with the show.
Hey, how are you, Mark? How are you, Mark?
I'm all right. Cheers. I'm all right. You
That's a
okay?
good-
Are you okay?
That's a good start. Well, yeah, no, I'm absolutely fine. We're absolutely stacked out, aren't we?
Yeah, I think we should probably start this episode with a little apology. I know we put out a release last week. We couldn't do a pod last week. We really tried. It was a mixture of time and bad internet connection, wasn't it?
We couldn't do it while we were on location.
Yeah,
and we have been everywhere, haven't we?
Yeah, we have. So real apologies for that one, guys.
Yeah, and we've got it all going on up until mid-December now. We're going to be not really at home much. So,
No. So we are.
It's all good.
Cool. Right then, let's crack on, shall we?
Yeah. Okay. So we're going to start with the news headlines from the photography world that have caught our eye this week.
So we're starting one. So basically, the world's most advanced camera went on sale this week. So we're going to have a discussion about that.
Brilliant stuff. Okay. Great new exhibition at the London Tate that we want to talk to you about.
We're also going to have a chat about the best secondhand cameras to buy in 2024.
Okay, and the bride who spent thousands on her wedding photos before realizing a tiny detail has absolutely ruined them. Interesting stuff.
Stuff, yes.
Good stuff. Okay, and also our main story that we're going to be talking about is about editing. How much time should you be spending on editing as photographers? Are you spending too long? Do you have a good workflow? And how much is it really costing you?
Indeed.
So Mark, tell me about this new camera that's just gone on sale.
Well, I mean, we did a little review on this camera when we heard the details, and I remember being a little underwhelmed. So, but then there was suggestion that was going to be other models afterwards, didn't they? So, but yeah, this is the flagship Canon EOS R1. Went on sale on the 14th of November, so 6 days ago from this recording. Yeah, I mean, it's apparently it's got a 96 megapixel stills capacity, 40 frames per second burst shooting, AI predictive AF, and 6K 6p video. So yeah, and that comes out on sale today. And this is based on an article that we saw on Digital Camera World, and it's a little barb actually, because the R1 has had quite a bit of negative reviews, hasn't it? I think, and I remember reading when I first read the the spec, I was like, oh, really? Especially on the pixel size. But 96 is rather large. But yeah, it just says, and I'm just going to quote this, just to remind you, and just in case you are buying into the nonsense from YouTubers who haven't used it, that this is just an R3 Mark II. The EOS R1 is the most advanced camera on the planet right now. And it goes on to say, I'll admit on paper it's not easy to see that, because you really do need to have used this camera to reveal its power. So I guess it's on paper it doesn't look, because when we saw it we were like, it doesn't seem that great, does it? But apparently when you use it, it's a different beast.
I think it really seems to be aimed at sports photographers, and in the world that we're working in, Mark, we know quite a few people that are involved in sports photography. They'll shoot marathon events around the world, and that type of thing. We know some of these photographers very well. And I know one photographer who I've been speaking to quite a lot recently, who we know, Mark, you and I know very well, who's been looking to buy the Nikon Z9 for sports photography, and he does a lot of dog photography as well, and he says he needs something that's really fast and all of that and everything. Now, he's not going to jump ship from Nikon to Canon, and he's not bought the Z9 yet, but this is really being put out there as the most advanced camera, the most advanced sports camera Now, is it worth buying? I think a lot of people are going to buy it because they want to just buy the latest flagship model. Fair enough. If you want to trade some in, that's probably what you're going to do. You're going to be trading something in, and you've got the R1 and you feel great with it and you've got the budget to do it, then great. Nothing wrong with doing that at all. However, a lot of people are going to be thinking, oh, I really need one. I really need one. But do you really need one?
I don't know. Well, my advice would be to wait, because I think there's going to be different versions of this model as well, which will serve different aspects of the industry. I can't remember the model names now, but I'm pretty sure there's going to be an EOS Z or an EOS R1, whatever it is. You know what I mean? I can't remember the model names, but there is going to be different. So this is for sports, like you said. So I think it's going to be another one that's going to be more pixel heavy than frames per second heavy, that kind of thing. So,
yeah, that's right. Yeah, and some people are going to be thinking, well, how much is this going to cost me if I do think about investing in one? Well, you're looking at around sort of 7,000 body only, which is what you would expect, actually.
Yeah.
That doesn't really surprise me that it's heading around that sort of cost. So, but it'd be interesting to see, get our hands on it at some point. Okay, Mark. So there's a great new exhibition in London
cool.
That's opening at the Tate Gallery, Tate Britain. I think it was open last week, and it runs through until May, so there's plenty of time. And it explores British photography from the 80s. Just read from the article in one of the sort of London magazines that I was looking through recently. It is viewed as a pinnacle era for the art form. Tate Britain will soon, it is now hosting a must-see photography exhibition that focuses on the social, political and economic shifts for Britain in the 80s. So looking through a handful of the images, it's a period that I can relate to, because I was at school in the 80s and it just left. You can hear something in the background. That's Milo, the dog who's in the bar with me. He's just walked in.
Is that Rocco?
Yeah, no, it's Milo.
It's Milo. Okay.
It's Milo. That's right. Yeah. But this, I always say that as photographers, we should visit exhibitions. We should see what other photographers do from the art point of view, and just see how exhibitions are presented. I think it's a really good learning curve. And with this 80s one, it goes from the punk rock rebellion to the rise of multicultural Britain, the conflict in Northern Ireland, to the AIDS epidemic. The collection is a vibrant and sometimes harrowing tapestry of images that reflect the nation in flux. Themes of race, class, identity and politics are all explored, offering a comprehensive and multifaceted view of the decade. So do go along to that, the Tate Gallery. It is open now and runs through until May. Yeah. Okay, Mark.
Okay, so always after a bargain, aren't we?
Well, do you know, it's Black Friday. For some of you that are listening to it, we've just gone past Black Friday.
Yeah, really? I thought Black Friday was this Friday.
Yes, it's so. Some of you for those of you that are listening to this now, Black Friday would have gone. That's what I'm saying, Mark.
Oh, was it? I thought it's tomorrow if we're listening today.
Right. Okay. Right. No, when this show goes out, Mark.
This show's out. It'll be Thursday.
Okay. Of course. Yeah. Sorry, that's where I am with my brain at the moment doesn't quite know where. Well, my body doesn't quite know where I am at the moment with so much traveling going on. But anyway,
guys, so we'll get onto it. So apparently there are some good cameras to go for if you're looking for secondhand in 2024. So this is based on an article by Stuff. And it's always an interesting read because they know their stuff really. So obviously they test them and everything. But yes, a lot of cameras that obviously we talk about are now popping up secondhand. So, for example, we have the Sony A7 III, which burst into the scene 2018. That came out 2018.
Yeah, and I always say
nuts.
Yeah, and I always say that because a lot of people sort of want to buy new cameras, and sometimes they can be a bit reluctant, looking at secondhand. But secondhand cameras are really worth looking at, because if you go to companies like Wex, here in the UK, MPB, which is brilliant. And if you look at their cameras that are in mint, excellent, good condition, right, those cameras are hardly used in some cases. Some of these cameras, have got such a low shutter count that you can really pick up a bargain. You don't need to buy new. You know, because
Yeah.
people are buying and trading these cameras in all the time. There's lots of pros that will use it, and then they use it for a while, and then they just trade it in for the latest model. And then you've got people that will buy a camera and never really use it and don't get the use out of it, and it's still sitting there. And I think it's brand new. I've hardly used it. I'll sell it on.
And
So-
a lot of these shops that sell it. I mean, obviously, London Camera Exchange is a prime example. We're not affiliated with them, but I have bought stuff from them before. Yeah, I mean, I had to buy a new camera quite quickly. And it was going to be it was an upgrade, and it was the Canon 5D Mark III second-hand body. I went second-hand because I had to, and I still use it now. And I bought it 2018, I think it was, the second-hand camera, and it's brilliant. There's no problem with it at all. And just looking down this list, you know, obviously we just spoke about the Sony, but the R5's up here as well. You can now get the R5 second-hand. That's nuts, isn't it?
Yeah, that really is actually. Yeah. It says you can expect to save over £1,000 over a brand new model by buying secondhand.
Yeah,
that's a hell of a saving. That is, in the Canon R5 is 45 megapixel, and it says it's been upgraded to Mark II edition. You can pick up a 2020 released original at reasonable price on the market. It records 8K video, which doesn't really come into it. So, but you know, to save over £1,000 on going second hand with that's really good. We've also got the another camera that's sort of quite very familiar with, actually, is the Nikon Z6 as well. Is it the Z6 Mark I? I think the only problem with the Z6 Mark I, and somebody will probably tell me, no, you're wrong, and if I am, then that's fine. I'm sure the Z6 Mark I only came with one card slot.
Oh, I'm not sure.
And now, if it did, then I'm shocked. And if it didn't, and then I've got something wrong. Okay,
well, I'm just gonna whilst you're talking about this, I'll have a little research.
Okay, so I want to talk about while you're doing that. So the Z6 now, I think, is now the Z6 II, is even the Z6 III, but the Z6 is still an amazing camera. And if it's your first entry point into mirrorless, the Mark Ones, as we will call them, are the ones to really go for if you really want to save some money. It says here the Z6 in particular is often available secondhand at bargain prices. It says, but if you need more resolution or frames per second, the Z7 is also worth checking out. However, I would say that the quality of the Z6, as long as you've got the right lens on it, you know that the resolution is going to be absolutely fantastic for most people. If you are a seasoned pro, then maybe you want to think twice about that. But for your hobbyist or someone wanting to get into photography generally, the resolution of the Z6 is impeccable. It's absolutely fine. They also
I think you're right, though. I think you're right. It's storage type, just says SQD.
That's a major flaw. And I think I remember that, I was trying to think back when it first came out. First of all, XQD cards are ridiculously expensive. I do think the CF Express and the XQD cards are a bit of a rip-off. And somebody will say to me, but do you know what the benefits are, fast write speed and all that? For the cost of them, when you're paying a lot of money, no, SD cards, look after your SD cards. And if anyone says to me, well, your images are better protected on an XQD card, yeah, they are. But SD card just as easy as you can lose an SD card.
Absolutely right. Yeah. They'll come down in price at some point, though. They're not going to stay at that price. So.
Right, yeah. Now, the Z6, that's the only reason why I wouldn't buy it, okay? It's because it's a one-card slot camera. However, that's because I work professionally.
Yeah.
Okay, but if you're a hobbyist, you're learning photography, you want to get into it, it's your first, then I absolutely go for it. But I'm sure Nikon did that on purpose, thinking, right, we'll stick the 2-card slot in the Mark II or the Z7 because we'll bring that out in 3 months because camera manufacturers have a habit of releasing far too many cameras.
They do.
Okay.
But there we go. So basically, have a look because there are some pretty new cameras out there in the secondhand market, just definitely worth checking out.
Certainly not going to go through that whole list, but the ones that I certainly agree with there, the Sony A7 Mark III, okay, fantastic camera. The Nikon Z6, fantastic camera, and then the Canon R5.
Yeah,
brilliant.
And they also do a shout out at the R6 as well, which will be even cheaper than the R5. And
will be.
I can testify the R6 is a marvelous camera. It really is good.
Good stuff. Okay, Mark, and we're going to just finish off the headlines with it's a wedding story, but I don't think we should just limit it to weddings. I think it doesn't matter what sort of photographer you are, whether you're a commercial photographer, product photographer, whether you're into fashion, whether you're a hobbyist or whatever. But there's a news story that came across out on the channels where a bride spent thousands on wedding photos before realizing a tiny detail ruined them, and it was saying that TikTok viewers. Okay, blamed the wedding photographer for letting the bride wear a hair tie on her wrist. So by the time the photos were taken, this hair tie was shown on all the photos, and they had to be edited. It says as a result of the mishap, the bride had to pay the photographer $2,500 to edit the hair tie out of the photos. And the bride said she was originally frustrated that no one, including her photographer, told her about the hair tie on her wrist. Now, I know that having you and I, Mark, having done so many weddings, that we pick up on these details without even thinking about it. Because I'll look out for, I've seen it where I'm about to do some photos of a bride or even of a groom. And if they're wearing a smartwatch, like an Apple Watch, I will always just say to them, do you want to keep your watch on or do you want to take it off? I'd suggest you take it off. One, because the Apple Watch, it's a great watch, don't get me wrong, but it looks horrible in wedding photos.
They do. Well, they don't.
Right?
Family photographs, in my family photography, I ask them to take Apple Watches off because they don't photograph very well. They're just like this black mass on someone's wrist. It's not like a Rolex or something with detail in it that can look quite nice.
Yeah.
This is, or not even just a Rolex, just a nice watch.
That's
Apple
right. Yeah.
They're not.
But generally, when you're doing photos, particularly here, any type of photos, wedding, fashion, we're talking about people, a portrait. These are the things as a photographer you're looking for. You look and you observe, don't you? You see these things. And I don't know the photographer here in question, obviously. I don't know how experienced he or she is at this and why was it missed, but I'd actually like to know that as well. I wouldn't just blame the photographer, okay, because there's you don't just immediately blame the photographer, but it is something I think that the photographer should have seen at any point on the day. And I'm not blaming the photographer. I'm not having a go at the photographer before this photographer comes on and says, look, you don't realize what happened and whatever, because it does actually say that the bridesmaid should have noticed it as well.
Yeah, everyone should have noticed it.
The bride should have noticed it. Surely the bride looked at herself in the mirror at some point and she just stared at herself for a minute thinking, yeah. And you realize I've got this, because they take off their jewelry, they take off their watch, they do that. How on earth could a hairband get left on? Yeah.
I think, look, it is part of the photographer's job to notice these things. It is, of course it is. But, what I don't like is this. What things can do. There might have been 100 things the photographer noticed, and this might be the one thing that he or she didn't notice. So, I don't like this going on to TikTok to complain about it nonsense. To be honest with you, the person who's the actual responsibility of this, I'm afraid, at the end of the day, is the bride's. It's the bride's responsibility. It's not the photographer. The photographer is not the wardrobe department. The makeup artist missed it. The hair. I mean, it must have been from when the hairdresser was doing the hair. I mean, there must be a link there. They missed it. The people putting on the dress, missed it. When did this come on? Was it before the dress was put on? Was it after the dress was put on? So yes, the photographer does bear some of the responsibility, but I don't know. Yeah. The other thing I find as well, again, this is more for family photography than I have with weddings, is I always ask about stuff on wrists. But sometimes it's a special thing. Do you know what I mean? Sometimes it's, I know a lot of Indian people, they have sort of like fabric I don't know the name of them, so pardon my ignorance, but they have sort of bracelets on, don't they? Men and women and kids and whatever. Yeah. And if to an untrained eye, that could look like a hair bobble, right? Yeah. And sometimes you ask, oh no, this has to stay on. And maybe the photographer thought, well, hang on, she must have noticed this. There must be a reason why this is on. And maybe it's a sensitive thing. And maybe I shouldn't inquire about it, because on the other side, people can get very funny with you if you suggest something that could be I don't know,
Yeah.
emotionally
Culturally
or
significant, yeah.
culturally significant. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And they can get a bit funny with you for demanding to take it off. So, but I have to say, I don't like this. At the end of the day, she's as much to blame as everybody else.
Oh, without a doubt.
I don't like this sort of complaining on TikTok nonsense. All the photographer should have done this, the photographer should have done that, blah, 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 blah. Fact of the matter is, you put it on, the duck. You know, maybe the photographer did ask and she didn't hear him or ignored him or her, and the photographer didn't push it. You know, there's a lot of things to push back here on.
Yeah. I think the lesson here, though, is if you're a photographer doing any sort of shoot, then try and look out for these things. Try and look into attention to detail.
Yeah.
And but don't just you know, it's your job to it's your job to look out for these things.
It is.
Yeah.
I mean, it's also the job of the maid of honor as well.
Yeah.
I have to say, it's you know,
exactly.
The photographer can only shoot what's in front of them, and yeah.
Okay, good stuff. Right, Mark, let's grab a drink. Right, Mark. I came across an Instagram reel. I don't know if it was sent to me or whether I saw it. And it's quite a funny one because it gave me the idea for this story. But basically, it's a little video. It says what a client expects when I'm done with the shoot. And this video shows it's speeded up and this photographer you see him running down the path to his front door. He's fumbling with his keys, getting the keys
in a rush.
He's in a rush.
He's in a rush.
Okay. He runs upstairs. He's not sat down. He plugs his drive, his SD card in. Okay. He plugs his SD card in and he's very quickly, as quickly as he can, he is downloading the photos and editing them.
Yeah, straight away, because that's what we all do, isn't it? Straight after a shoot, you know. We drive home, we get there really quickly, and we don't even bother about unloading the stuff that's in the car. Oh no, we just go straight in. Don't say hello to our significant others and just start working on that edit.
Exactly, and that's what it's like. However,
that's what we do.
I'm reading some of the comments because it is quite funny. It says, I mean, again, it says how clients expect you to come home from a photo shoot. And some of the comments are quite funny because someone says, couldn't you set up your computer downstairs? So much extra time wasted going upstairs with a smiley face. And it says here, it says, this is not true. We expect you to send them as soon as you get in the car. And another one where he had a customer phoning him, asking him if they were ready yet, and the guy hadn't even got onto his train yet on his way home. And so it is very much like that. People just expect the pictures to be turned around just in an instant. So my take on this is that how long should we be spending on a shoot, on the editing of a shoot? And obviously it's been how much that your client is paying you, but have you factored in that time? And have you actually made it clear to the client in your original quote how long the turnaround time is? Because whenever I quote a job to a commercial client or to a wedding client, it says turnaround time. And if they want a quicker turn, I will actually ask them, what's your deadline on this? What's your turnaround? So if they say, look, we need them back next day, we need them for the press office at 9 a.m. the following day, and I'm going to be finishing the shoot at, say, 8 p.m. or something the night before, then they really should be paying for that rushed service. You know, if they say, oh, look, we don't need them for a couple of weeks, no rush with them, then you might say, okay, now you might still get back and edit those photos that night because you've got a lot on, you just want to get them done out the way, but you're not delivering them to the client that quickly, you know, and you always want to impress your clients by delivering ahead of schedule. But at the same time, if a client says, I don't need them for 2 weeks, just don't deliver them in a couple of days. In 2 weeks, deliver them in maybe less than a week or something, you know, so you're well ahead of the schedule. But for future, you're not putting yourself under pressure. But
I think it's all about forward planning when it comes to this kind of thing. With my family stuff, I tend to book their viewing in about a week. week or so. But it's always planned. So at the end of the shoot, we go, okay, let's look at dates and then make sure it's ready for that date because they're going to come in and see the photos and whatever.
Yeah.
But after that, when it's about the delivery of the final products, I always quote 6 to 8 weeks because I spend a lot of time on their edits because they're spending a fair amount of money with me. So it's got to be absolutely right. But also you got lab timings to factor into that. You've also got mess up time as well. I've done a PC version of what that call. So mess up time. So that could be something that, you send something to the lab and it comes back and it's wrong. And you went, oh no, I missed that. And you need to do it again. Or maybe the lab mess up. Maybe, they get the frames ready and just as they're going to give it to you, they drop it and break the glass and it has to be redone. Mess up time. You have to put that in there as well.
Yeah. Now
because all that can happen without the client knowing about it. Weddings, I tend to do about the same. Yeah, I tend to quote a long time because, quite frankly, they're not the only wedding I do. I don't just do one wedding a year. I've got loads of other people's to edit as well. So especially in the height of summer. So you have to factor all that in.
Yeah. Now, what I wanted to do, Mark, was I want to try and break it down a little bit because all the things that we actually take into all the things that we factor and as photographers, do we think about these, or video editors as well? How much time do you spend editing an image? Are you using the right tools to help you save time? And then do you struggle with over or even under editing? Okay. And it's important, the amount of time that you spend editing, it's based on so many factors such as your style, the type of photography, your client expectations, and also the tools that you're using. And by that, I mean, you could be using a PC, a laptop or a Mac that could just be really slow. It could be dated, all of those things. Even the speed that you're exporting images and importing images into Lightroom takes a lot of time. Okay. So I was going through some of the factors that influence this type of thing. And you've mentioned a couple, like you were talking about weddings and portrait photography. Because say with wedding photography, you've often got thousands of images that need to be edited. And, you could spend minutes per image, or you could batch process. There are programs that do that now. Yeah. Or you could break it down and you do keep a few images for detailed edits. Some photographers, they'll go out and shoot 2,000 photos and they'll give the client 300 very carefully edited pictures. We all have different ways of working. So and then with portraits, as you said, that requires more time. It's far more focusing on skin retouching, color adjusting, the minor adjustments to achieve perfection. I've seen you do that, Mark. Okay. And that really is far more intricate than a wedding. But some people make wedding editing very intricate. And I feel that it's my personal view is that it's unnecessary for a lot to do that. I do think a lot of photographers, from what I see, they work on their wedding images as though they're individual pieces of art. Now, I don't have a problem with that, but you also have to then think that, if you're shooting a wedding, is how realistic are those pictures? Is that what your clients ask for? Is that just what you decide to give? Are you spending day and night editing hundreds of wedding pictures when in actual fact, the client's not really even going to notice a lot of it? I mean, how many times have you taken some great pictures wherever you give it to the client, you think these are amazing, or there's a couple of great ones in there and they never even notice them. So who have you done that for yourself or for the client? And when it becomes a business, you're shooting for your client. So when it comes to, like for myself with wedding photography, what we do is we'll shoot a wedding and we will do a quick scan through the pictures, crop the pictures just to improve those, go through a little bit of exposure corrections, and then we'll hand those over to the couple in that way. Then they choose pictures for their wedding album, and then those ones are carefully edited because all of the other pictures that they've got, they're absolutely fine. They don't need heavy editing. We don't need to be doing that, but that's only the way that I work. So when we shoot a wedding, we will have that edit done in a morning. It's done and it's finished. And I'm talking a few thousand pictures here. Some people might be spending 4 weeks doing that. That's absolutely fine. That's not a problem. But as long as you've factored that time in your costs and that you're not putting yourself under pressure as well by working day and night when the client doesn't really even need that. The next thing is also the style and the skill level. Now, Mark, you're very highly skilled at editing. and I've seen you do it, and I'm not at all. My editing is quite poor because I've not really done it for years. I did it many years ago, and then had somebody else that worked here, and then took it on, and now I outsource all of it. But there's some people that spend a lot of time because they want to really stylize their images. They really want to perfect every single detail, and you do that really with your portraits, don't you?
It's that word style again, isn't it? I do certain things that I like to do because not because I was after a style, but just because that's the way I like to see my images produced, I guess. It's a different thing though. If you're talking about, I mean, my business model for family photography is very different to my business model for wedding photography, and the same for yours. With a wedding, the bride and groom are paid up front before the wedding's even started. So they've already paid, you know what I mean? And not to say you're going to put in less effort, but you're going to create a group of images, just like you said. So, that's probably the way to do it. With my family photography, it's a bit different. So I create a show for them to watch. Now, with the package that they've got, it's probably been given to they may have bought a voucher, which is, not very much because it's a special offer voucher, or they may have been giving it because I've got a corporate relationship with a company that they've used. But my work at the viewing, does that make sense?
Yeah.
So when they come back to see them, I have to really sell it because I want them to buy more. That's how my business works. But with the wedding, it's different because it's don't get me wrong, you still put in the effort that's required for it. I'm not saying you do a lesser job for the wedding or anything like that, but there is a bit of a difference. So perhaps I would do more for my my family photography session before they've seen them than I would for the wedding ones, because like you said, you get all these images and then you do you then redo it for the album. I think I do a little more editing than you do for weddings, but not that much more. I don't do all the skin stuff I do for the families. But even the family stuff, the skin stuff is minimal because it's not about that. But I guess with weddings, you have a makeup artist on the day. Family photography, you don't have that. So, it's that's another difference as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess it's really down to how your business model is.
So
it's different.
And then the next thing that sort of I was sort of making these notes, I was thinking about it, is we're saying about your style and your skill level. So many, we're all at different retouching levels, and some people have got the skill to do it very, very quickly and very, very well, but then you've got the newcomers into the industry who don't really do a lot of editing, and they will spend half an hour on an image just to fix their hair and little hair flies and everything like that. But that's where I think a lot of people need to be careful where time can just run away with them. But then the next thing is your tools that you're using. Are you using Lightroom, Photoshop, or other, or another sort of powerful program that's going to make it much easier for you to edit? Or are you using a free editing software from somewhere? How well do you know it? Do you know shortcuts? Because the learning of Photoshop and Lightroom never ends. It's continuing. Are you doing things like masking, retouching, color correcting? And the more that you do that, the quicker you get at it, but also at the same time, it's more time spent actually doing it. And all I always say is get it right at photography as much as you can. The more,
I was just about to say that. Right? When you're talking about hair flyaways and things in a family shoot, it's normally the woman's hair. Let's not beat around the bush. Excuse me. So I'm constantly fixing hair. Fixing hair because I know fixing hair in Photoshop is a pain in the ass. I'm not gonna lie, it's difficult to do, it's tedious. So get it right in camera, definitely.
But for a lot of shoots, you don't need to do that. That flyaway hair might just be part of the natural feel of the day. You can, you might be unnecessarily editing, which comes on to the next thing, and that's striking the right balance of your editing. What you don't want to do is you don't want to over edit. Okay. So the more time you spend on an image, you start to over process your images. And certainly when it comes to weddings and fashion photography, I think then you lose the authenticity of your images. So for anything like documentary photography, where trying to keep things natural is key. You want to spend as little time as possible and get it right at shoot stage as much as you can. Okay,
Yeah,
working
just
in the
basic
studio.
curves. That's all you need really for that stuff.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and even that, even if you don't know curves, just your exposure, contrast, your blacks and your shadows, they're right at the top of. They're your three main sort of 4 or 5 sort of main sections of editing that are right at the top of Lightroom. And as the more you scroll down your menu section on the right hand side, the more there is to mess around and play with, and you can change the distortion of the picture and all that. And some people do that as a matter of course, but you can just get carried away with it. And then you've got, sorry, I'm going to just come back onto that, but have the right program as well to edit as well. I know a lot of people don't like paying the cloud subscription to Lightroom or Photoshop, but if you're a professional, that's just a cost to a business.
I'm afraid so.
And if it's costing you £10 a month or £20 a month, it's not a lot depending on how much work you do, but some people begrudgingly pay that, and you shouldn't be. That's your working tool, like your camera. Lightroom or Photoshop or whatever it is, is your working tool.
Yeah, and it's much better than how it used to be. I think when you used to have to spend 500, was it 300 to 500 quid on a box of Photoshop, with a CD, and then 2 years down the line, a new one comes up with all these newfangled things, and that's another £300 to £500 or whatever it was. At least this time, when you're paying £10 a month, it breaks it down, and you're constantly getting the latest updates. Exactly. So. It's much better than what it used to be. But also going back to what we were saying before, editing, the editing costs, that is an editing cost. So it's not just time, it's your cost of the programs that you're using. You've got to factor that into your what you charge.
And and so I put sort of budget versus time, and if you spend excessive hours on editing for a low paying project, then obviously your profit and your time goes. Now you might say, well, I actually enjoy it. I love sitting in front of a computer and I enjoyed it. I get that as well. And I want to get it right for the client. I want to do this. I want to do that. And you want to exceed client expectations. I get all of that. But there also comes a point as well when you need to be professionally charging for all of that as well. So, and a good way to do is to preempt that right at the beginning quote is asking, as I said, your client, what's your turnaround time? What do you want the images to look like? And asking about budgets and making sure that you've covered those costs. And then when you know that you've covered your costs quite well, if you want to spend an extra hour, a couple of hours on something, then it's not so bad. So you need to think carefully about that. Now, then consistency is another thing. The more you, as I said, the more you edit, the more you over-process your images. And sometimes you just want to keep your images clean and consistent. Okay, and not go through that over editing process. Now, part of that really comes to your workflow as well. What workflow do you have? Do you have lots of unnecessary steps? And I'm talking about right from the moment that you download the images on your card onto your computer. Do you have a smooth and efficient workflow, or are you constantly plugging one drive in, then another, and then going to Lightroom, and then putting your images into Photoshop, and then going back into Lightroom? Now, if you're doing that, but it's efficient, then that's fine. But if you're finding that you're doing a lot of unnecessary steps, then write everything down and try and figure out the steps that you can minimize and make more efficient. And then just general tips that you can do for time management. Things like batch processing. Consider batch processing. If you can edit 2 images at the same time using the same settings, or you can edit 10,000 images at the same time by just learning how to batch process. You can create presets and actions where, if you again want to create the same effect on multiple photos, you don't need to be working on a photo at one at a time. You can do it all in one go. Now we're starting to use automated tools, things like AI, that can reduce time with all the little tedious tasks and skin retouching. So it's worth starting to investigate what AI is able to do. And another thing is, what you can actually set yourself a time limit that you're going to spend on each image, whatever image it is. But let's take a job like a wedding or a fashion shoot where you've gone away and you've come back with thousands of images. You might just say, right, okay, I'm going to spend no more than 15 seconds per image on this. or I'm going to spend no more than a minute, or I'm going to spend no more than 10 minutes. You know what is the maximum time that you need to spend. And suddenly, if you look at your watch and you think, right, I'm going to spend 10 minutes an image, that's going to take me 6 days, right? To edit. Then you realize and you think, oh yeah, I didn't think of that. Whereas if I say 15 seconds, oh, okay, I'm going to be done by lunchtime. Fantastic. Okay, so setting a time limit can actually be quite good. But generally, there isn't a one size that fits all, because every shoot is different, every photographer is different, and every editing skill is different. But I think the main thing is to think about efficiency, think about, the artistic side of your images, decide when an image is good enough and when it meets its purpose. Are you delivering something to the client? Have you exceeded the expectations but done it in a reasonable amount of time where you've not lost money and wasted a lot of time? The other thing is keep practicing with your editing. The more you do, the quicker you get at it. And you'll find that you'll be doing multiple tasks on one image, whereas before it took you an hour, you can get it done in literally 2 or 3 minutes now. So that was sort of to help photographers to think about the editing process, Mark. I thought it was good. And it all sparked from that silly Instagram video, which was so accurate. The guy running down the path to his home, hasn't even taken his coat off, and he's running up the stairs and he's downloading it because that's what the client, is that what the client was expecting, or is that what you just want to do? Lots of things to think about in our workflow.
Cool.
Okay. Good
we
stuff.
Just need to do some patron shout outs.
You go for it, Mark.
Yeah. So Craig Chuck, Rob Percy, Amara Zainab, Emily Brown, Frank Case, Carl Sherville. I think that's everyone.
I think so.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Well done, guys. Thank you. And thank you for supporting the show. And we will see you next time.
Bye for now.